So yeah, I've had a really bad cold for the last 2 days. So anyway, I haven't been doing much, and the family doing kind of said hi. You could just-
But
But
you
you
got
you look surprisingly sporty and and fresh to have a cold.
It's awful, but thank you. It's probably just a super short hair, and that's the reason I have the cold. My hair
Ah.
actually had a bad cold. So yeah, that was really annoying. Anyway, hello, Raphael.
hello.
So one thing that happened this week that's kind of interesting is Author got featured on the App Store. I don't know if it's featured in other countries. Could you guys please have a look at the main page on the App Store? If there is, in the Discover tab, some of them have cool tools for school, and one of those is called A+ apps for students. Do you have that, and is Author inside that? I'm just gonna have to get some from the kitchen. Sorry, 1 second.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It might be contextual because I'm getting a bunch of game things on my Today apps. I see PDF expert.
Okay, one job, but I have to go. My meeting is started.
So where are you supposed to click? So I'm at the App Store, but
Oh, sorry, everyone.
Maybe it's only in the Mac App Store, not the iOS App Store. Right?
okay.
That's right. Yeah. Yes.
Oh, okay.
What I have is get color coordinated, digitized documents, hit the Oregon Trail, and essential apps for freelancers.
So is there nothing that says cool tools for school?
I have that, but I can't really find. I wonder.
Well, this is what's so interesting.
I see it.
Where's the cool tool for school supposed to be?
It's on that Discover tab, and it's quite far. It's, well, third down.
Well, there it is.
Discover. So where's the Discover tab?
And then
And
inside
Frode,
the-
what is a subcategory, or is it featured?
the subcategory inside Cool Tools for Schools, there's a tab all the way to the right called A+ apps for students. And it's in there.
It is, yes.
Okay. It's very interesting because, first of all, even though it's kind of on the front page, it's really hard to find, as you guys are experiencing. And
I'm not finding it yet. I went to show all, but it doesn't seem to be in there. So it's not in see all.
Oh, very interesting. I'm looking at Raphael's screenshot coming down now.
So
So if, okay.
so apple.com/app store, and so that's the page that I'm viewing right now, but I'm kind of confused.
Oh yeah, that's the problem. It's confusing.
I'm not listening. I can't figure out how to back out of it. Let's see. Maybe. Okay, done.
They have hidden
When do you have to
arrows.
click done to go back? That's craziness.
Yeah, that's really bad interaction design.
The App Store is such a high degree of bad. It's really awful. It's very, very peculiar.
I'm looking at the Mac Store app in the Discover tab, but I don't see anything to do with Cool for School.
You will.
Well, I see it cool for cool way down, but I only see 2 graphic headers on it.
But if you can
And
scroll
nothing
to
else.
the right,
You can scroll that list
Yeah,
the
no,
right.
I am scrolling, but
it's so pathetic.
sideways.
Whoa, there's a sideways.
Yeah,
scroll. I had
even
no
harder
idea.
to. And we are professionals working with it. But maybe
Oh,
we're
the
not
humanity.
swipe professionals.
Oh, the
sorry,
humanity.
but I'm too stupid to discover the Discover tab.
So what are we looking for now under this
Okay, let me show you guys.
pulling marquee?
Yeah.
It's actually kind of interesting because, hang on. I'm
Yeah,
gonna
it didn't show up. for
Okay,
me.
so I'm sharing my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
So scroll down. I'm just going to move this tab thing out. There we go.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
So here, cool tools for schools, and then going to have to move you guys out of the way. You're blocking. There we go. On the right, when I mouse over, there's an arrow. So I click on that a few times. And then I click on A+ apps for students. And then I scroll down to Craft Great Pros, and there it is.
Okay.
But,
Well,
yeah,
I'm viewing the web page, so it looks completely different.
yeah, of course. And you're not on Mac. So
Yeah.
And if someone can find that, they should win a free trip to Disney World.
So you're not missing out, Gunter. It's just, yeah.
That is exactly the point. But when you please click on author, can you tell me what chart position you see? Because you're in different places.
Okay,
Okay.
let's try that.
But I didn't get that bit.
No, but just search for author normally. Just go.
Yeah, okay.
Actually, search for writing. It usually comes out quite well.
Yeah,
151 here in education.
107 in Brazil.
One moment. Oh, I'm not on Big Sur, which I'm sort of lagging behind on 14.6, which may be why I'm being shown
You
different
don't
stuff.
mention that in polite company, Mark.
Wow. Yeah, it's on my list of things to do, but as I've got to do the whole house in the same go, I'm sort of rather putting it off.
No, but Mark,
Too many devices.
you're going to have the same result as me. But
74, yeah.
what did you get, Peter?
Let's see, checking now. Okay, I have open. Now, where's the position located in this listing here? Let's see, I'm author, number 46 on education.
Oh,
What did you say? Number what?
It's showing number 46 education as a listing.
So you're presumably on the US App Store, and we're looking, well, Fred and I will be looking, presumably at the UK one, and Adam's looking at, I don't know,
Exactly.
Swedish or-
Stockholm. Yeah.
Stockholm, yeah, yeah.
So here's the thing, guys, and I think we need to, as a community, take this seriously. So, overall in the world, we got 4.6 out of 5 ratings. In the UK, 4.8. But if I now click on trends, and I know this is being recorded, but this is really very embarrassing. So we click now on author. These are my download numbers. So this has been being featured over the last few days. This was some random weird thing. I think it was in China. It was listed just for a few days. So, these are downloads that don't necessarily pay, right? So being featured, I thought was going to be my great salvation. But now you've seen, A, the feature doesn't necessarily mean people can see it, and B, it does no increase. But even worse, look at, this is the money I'm making. One
Have you
sale
ever
every
announced
few
it?
days for $15 or $45.
Mm.
Did you ever announce it on Product Hunt?
I did, but I'm finding it difficult to do updates there, and I'd love to talk to you about that separately. But
Okay.
the reason I'm showing you my intimates here is to show that actually making money, unless you have a successful game or a huge company, or you do all the work yourself, is really, really hard.
No, it is definitely.
We
I'm
used to,
ask-
sorry, what?
No, I'm asking because Chris Messina, he's part of the first book. He's that guy that invented the use for hashtags and filtering and stuff.
Yeah.
And he's like the #1 product hunter on Product Hunt.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I think maybe that's a conversation to be had with him as well. And I think that's aligned together with a bigger plan of making a specific video for Product Hunt as a launch, where it showcases like the main features, and realign it as an education tool, like you mentioned, which might be nice.
Okay,
Yeah,
I
no-
have an idea. Maybe if you could get interviewed by the Nest Labs community,
I was.
that might directly plug you into people who'd really be disposed to
No, I was.
get behind author.
I appreciate your specific help. I did do a presentation, Ness, about a year and a half, 2 years ago, something like that. So that was good fun on the future of text and so on. And hang on, everyone, I just have to run and say hi bye to Edgar. I think he's sorry. 1 second, I'm so sorry. Been embarrassing.
Okay.
There's a guy I follow on YouTube called Francesco something. He does reviews for productivity apps. Let me see if he has a review for Author.
Yeah, sorry, guys. Well, I mean, what I'm trying to highlight is not just my own issue with this. And, you know, on Author, we are doing a different presentation now on the Author website. By the way, the dynamic view will be renamed Concept Map because it is a concept map, you know, but you have to click to see the equivalent of arrows. But the reason I'm bringing it up with you guys is also the bigger issue of us as a community of how to be able to do stuff like this. I'm lucky, I had some money I could put into it. And I made more money before I made Author free, believe it or not. When it was for sale for a few dollars, you know, I made some money, but now that it's free and people try to have to pay for an upgrade, it's incredibly little. So
I wonder if you target a very hard group students, they rather pirate or use free stuff as Mark commented on earlier, and they want to drink beer and not pay for anything. So I think a better place in the market would be people like, well, people like me who bought it, who has no problem buying software, and going for a professional who wants a tool to write and think in.
I think the challenge you.
So the little blurb on the App Store should say, software for you who don't mind paying for software.
Maybe.
I mean, a further challenge you slightly have is, of course, at the moment, for all the good reasons associated with the thesis and everything, you're looking at the sort of teacher-student thing, and as Adam's just pointed out, you know, one of the problems is students don't want to waste beer money on software. That might not be a good thing, but that's kind of the status quo. So the other end of it is the teachers, or a guest spot on the Kardashians.
Well, the numbers are interesting though, and that's why I'm happy to share this with you guys, because first of all, when the software cost money, I made $500 a month, now making less than 100, right? Of course, the download numbers went up, but the key feature of this is that you can export to PDF at an academic quality you can hand in with reference section and everything. Seems not to be the appeal, since that is what you pay for. That's the upgrade. So I'm just going to say that I think I agree with what Adam is saying. And also now that the different focus with the concept mapping and so on, and that is why I'm bringing it to the community, like what Gunther is looking into and different people here. Maybe the people who just want to think and write good, to use a Zoolander kind of an angle, is exactly right. Just kind of give up on students, still support them, but just don't try to approach them, right?
I'm curious, does the App Store have any kind of an A/B testing model so that you could have some people see the price at 15 and then other people see if it was being charged for $49 or something at a higher price point? Because sometimes people perceive something with a higher price as actually being worth putting the money into, whereas if it's too inexpensive, they can't believe that anyone who had your level of functionality would be willing to sell it at that low a price. Therefore, they assume that it's not worth paying even the lower amount for.
When you start to that sentence, I should have rudely interrupted you, because when you start saying, does the App Store have? The answer is always no.
No.
It's just awful environment for developers.
Yeah.
However, what
And
you said
users.
does make a lot of sense. And Apple is famous for having free models of every computer, the better best, right? So it's called framing in psychology, of course. You know, if you say, like when the Apple when the Mac came out, the Apple II sales went up because people wanted to see the Mac. Oh, that's too expensive. They'll buy this one.
Because maybe what you should have is a free non-upgradable version, and then at a significantly higher price point, you know, author academic.
Yeah, we tried that with Liquid before. We had Liquid Pro and Liquid Free, but it just meant that there were two different pieces of code to maintain because it's completely separate, two different URLs to market. Became a real mess. So now we just have Liquid with, you know, you can choose to upgrade, which very few people do, and that's absolutely fine. We're not really investing in it. But as a community, you know, Rome has managed to get basically make a website that charges a huge amount of money, and people go absolutely mad for it, and that's a great success.
Yeah, but that's like building a Captain Monty collection. Rome is a roach motel for your data, and it's very exciting for people who want to collect a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
It's not. I mean, some people get something out of it, but broadly, what you're doing is making something that after a couple of years, you'll say you'll give it, you'll stop and you'll use something else. And there's an interesting thread discussing knowledge management over on the Tinderbox forums. So what it boils down to, there's nothing wrong with these tools per se, but it's not. You know, it's this idea that just collecting stuff does not of itself make things. And you know, the tragedy here is what you're doing with Author is interesting because you're helping push people towards making structure that's useful. The trouble is the number of us who really understand that principle or the upside of that is actually vanishingly small.
Yeah.
So that's one of the humps you've got to get over. So even if people buy your software, say, hey, that looks really cool, it does this, and then it'll, you know, sit in their pile of things. I mean, I don't know the answer, but I feel your pain.
Yeah, but the reason I decided that this would be a good community to bring it up, not just because you're techie and smart, is also AOL. You know, AOL was a huge thing. They mailed disks to everybody, and it was a closed-in system. And it was the open internet and web that actually killed it. So, you know, we are living in a couple of silos of information stuff today. But, you know, you're looking at Gunter and Jury, people like that who are making powerful things that aren't like that. How do we actually make money? It's really difficult, especially if you're a Mac user. If your software isn't on the App Store, to be able to download it and install it is actually really difficult. Apple, for good reasons, don't want malware, but also they are very not so pleasant.
Well, isn't the answer if you look at the example of, I don't know, Linux or something? The answer is you make money by consulting. So whether the software, you know, whether the software is free or costs money is no indication of whether it's sort of easy to use or does exactly what you want, unless it's a really, really narrow little utility whose scope is so small there's not much scope for accident. So outside that, it's the ability. So, I mean, you know, an off-the-wall idea is approach it from that thing. And I know you're sort of doing that in terms of trying to get teachers. So, for instance, it's, you know, if courses were in some way financed to use it. So, you know, the problem you've got at the moment is just getting enough people to adopt it to get fair win. I think people who understand the concepts underneath it, most of the people I've heard you sort of present in front of get it, but it's not the top of their problem heap. So it's trying to find a way to get it into a wider circulation. I'm not sure, for all that it does, that it's a sort of obvious sell to people who don't really know, even if they have the problems that you're solving. You know, but the world's cruel like that.
So on another note, which is related, and thank you for that. So as I think all of you know, we're also writing a history of text. And that's basically just a timeline with a couple of appendices at the back. And it's becoming really, really useful. So what I will do, and I want to ask what you want to do, what I will do is release it as a separate printed book, as a separate downloadable PDF that will also, and this is what I need your feedback. I want to have a thing that is a PDF document that is Future of Text 1, Future of Text 2, and the timeline, all in one PDF. But I don't know what to call it, because logically it should be 3 separate documents, right, in terms of citation and so on. And that's probably practical. And the reason for that is we can do more exciting things with it. So the history of text timeline, I'm very happy to let anybody here take all the data and do something else, like Mark did. If Jury wants to put it on on his trail mark somehow, Günther wants to do something special, that's fantastic. And then inside the PDF, we can have a normal link to it. Because we're talking about a timeline of specific data, it's much easier to do things with.
How about color-coded books? You can have the future of text, the red book, future of text, the blue book, future of text, the purple book.
Blue book. I'm not buying a new car, you know, Peter.
That's right. They will have the rainbow edition, you know, because that's what it is.
That will be my son. He will be the rainbow edition.
Yeah, but I like the name.
The interesting thing about it, and the interesting modern affordance of it, is, of course, in the paper sense, well, whether you buy one book this thick or another, you know, a book that's both the volumes bound together or whatever, is your ability to do the extraction and do a meta index across it. Now, on one level, blinding glimpse of the obvious. It's one thing to think it, it's another to do it. And I think that's another quite interesting angle to it. You know, and potentially even be able to link into sort of meta contributions, so annotations people have made. It's a way of moving the sort of the focus a bit and moving the debate on, because a lot of the problem is a lot of really good ideas around, but they're not manifested, and there's there are people here making stuff, and it's sort of hard going. So I think an interesting part of what you've described is this a more accessible over-index to it.
Yeah. Yeah, Jerry, just to give you context, for the few minutes you came in, I was moaning that author is not featured on the App Store, but it's A, featured in a way that's hard to find, B, the download numbers are not very good at all. So the question is a little bit of how people like us can make money with software, especially if we make an app, which is outside of what you do because you don't make an app. And now we're talking about I think you came in for this, the book, how to make it a big book, but also how to put it in different people's environments so we can link to from the book.
Did you know there's a conference series on the business of software?
That's interesting.
Let me find a link to it. They have tons of old talks from previous years that are available for free download. So let me see if I can find that.
Thanks. I think, Jerry, did you have your hand up?
Yes. But Adam also wanted to say, so I let him say whatever.
Yeah, on the topic of author, I think the best way to make money and survive on it is to make it go back to a non-free version. Maybe you could give coupon codes to students or something in a back channel somewhere, or to your friends and make us pay $15 or so for the starting software. Maybe pay some extra for the concept map things. I would be willing to pay more than $15 if it's good, but I think it's good to pay from the start. I think you could make more money, or make more money by targeting the writer community who want a good non-markdown minimalistic editor, because there have been a few markdown editors like IA Writer. I used that for a while. It was very nice and minimalistic. Many people loved it, but I think having a rich text editor that is minimalistic, full screen, and with some a beautiful editor is a beautiful editor, a fast editor, and also really push for the versioning, because you have built-in versioning that is very useful, and I think that could be pushed further. Having lots of automatic version. Programmers have that, of course. But for regular writers, it's very important to know that whenever you save, you get a new revision.
What, you're talking about the integration with Time Machine versioning, right?
Yeah, it would be nice if you could integrate it even more, so you can see it directly to see past paragraphs. But I use the revisions all the time, because then I can edit heavily and still have my past versions there.
When it comes to versioning, I tend to swear by darks. Also, there's a newer system called Pjoule. It's still a little on the buggy side, but that's a good contender also. They're based on a theory of patches. So unlike your traditional checkpoint commit-based model, they actually store the patches as discrete entities. So it's possible to cherry pick patches and roll back a patch without also having to undo everything else that you did that was orthogonal to the thing you're trying to roll back.
Yeah, that's super cool, but it's not for you, for my my brother and sister, really.
It's not something you can put into Author, but it's really cool to learn
Yeah,
about.
nobody's put a humane user interface on it yet.
Oh yeah, thanks for Cosmic. I have looked at Cosmic. It looks like a nice tool.
Well, you should talk to them because they sound like a really nice bunch. They actually solved the technical problem of turning a Mac app destined for the App Store into something that runs in the browser. Think about that.
Wow.
Think about that. And this is what Dylan Stack was trying to do, but these guys actually done it. So if you, because that's they produce this beautiful iPad app, but they know there's no way you can, it doesn't matter how good it is. Unless you are on the web, you don't exist. I mean, this is why I had an Android app back in 2012 and showed it to a friend of mine and said, why are you nuts? You know, if you don't have a web equivalent, you're never going to be able to sell. And he was right. And in fact, people for the last 4 years, they stopped downloading apps. I don't download app at all. The whole App Store is dead because
App Store is absolutely not dead.
Yeah,
no,
okay.
It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. If that's dead, then I want to be a zombie.
Sorry. I didn't mean that. What I meant was that there are just the stuff that is there is not discoverable. And even if they are, I you know, there are statistics about this. People used to download apps that hardly ever happens now.
But we want things to be very instant. Part of the problem, it's a bit like watching the iOSification of the Mac OS. You know, I'm sitting here working on 3 screens. I don't want, you know, I choose to not work on something this size. But I'm well aware that's not the reality. Most people, that's their computer existence. So I see it from both ends. And of course, anything that's simple in the mind's eye is obvious to do, which is why people say, you know, why can't I have this really complicated thing? And why doesn't it work on an iPad or a phone? And the answer is, a bit complicated, you know.
But Adam, just based on what Yuri and Mark said, what are the reasons you use the apps? You seem to be more of the market kind of person.
Why I use Author?
Yeah, specifically.
I've been using Notes, Apple Notes heavily because the integration with my phone and so on, but I want something that is versioned. And Notes isn't that. I've lost many. I worked as an improv drama teacher, and I collect different exercises and so on, but I lost many good notes and exercises just because I overwritten them, or kids deleting notes from an iPad or so on. So I really need a version history, and I also want a beautiful app. And I think you have a good sense. Good sense. I like the aesthetics of the app. I don't want to be in a fixed with character editor. I work in an editor all the time, and I love many affordances of an editor, like the mini maps with the full text. I like the versioning history and so on. So editors are good to look at when developing word processors to steal some features. But I really want a minimalistic feature set. I want to concentrate on the text. I don't want to see too much because I get distracted. And we know that it's easy to get distracted going down a Wikipedia rabbit hole. So I think you should push for the minimalism, the focus, versioning, good versioning, and that it's good looking. I think you should also try to, there are some speed issues. Like we talked about, or I emailed you about backspace, and sometimes it get a bit slow. That thing, be the fastest editor in town.
Yeah, we looked into that. That's something to do with bullet points. It's quite complicated, but I'm very glad you brought it up. Because what I'm wondering here is, where can we, obviously we talked a million times about visual meta and things like that, but when I mentioned AOL earlier and how the web won, it's because the web is open, obviously. So what are the things that we can do that is usefully interactive, or interconnective for the user? So that, we can, as we've talked about many times, but in terms of actually making money, some of us, of this at some point, it's got to have some level of network effects.
Absolutely. Can I just say something? That the idea of talking about the 3 volumes, whatever, I really think, remember 2017, I was there, Future of Text, Wendy was saying, well, 3 things that was right. One of them was obviously bidirectional link. Okay, that's gone. As everybody knows that it's great. It took them 50 years to acknowledge, but that's great. Now, transclusion is hitting this work now. Everybody goes rave with transclusion now. And micropayment is around too now. So I think the whole idea, this is also hypothesis, and this whole idea, the idea that you can create now a collaborative overlay over the web. There is, I think Bridget IO is doing that, I'm doing that, everybody's going to be doing it. But the point is that what that requires is that make the unit of content meaningful in itself. And you should be able to have, this is what Ted been raving about for 50 years. Why should I buy a 750-page book when I just really, really want to work with on 1 chapter? And the logic of that is that this way, actually, communities now forming on Substack and many other places where people started paying for good content. And the next step is paying for the means to produce those good content. And those means will become sort of mobile, if you like, or ephemeral, or easier to deliver. So that really changes the thing, that not only content is leaving decentralized silos and people form social networks of interest. That is the network effect you're looking for tool makers. I mean, the whole point of Fission, you should talk to them when they come visit us. The whole point is that the barrier of entry of producing good quality capability is lowered, because within that, not just Fission, there interoperability means you don't have to do everything yourself. You don't have to be a well-funded VC thing, but even your beautiful editor itself can be of value. And in fact, I'm doing this, but I'm not alone with this. My whole vision is that let's have hundreds of different people are different. Their aesthetic, their way of working with text is different. There is no one size fits all. So that really means if you make the capability just as mobile as the content, and it actually comes together at your point, people will pay for it. Just the same, it's just, and it's gonna be a unit cost, and it really changes the game, because I've just been reading a great article. Even the Googles of this work are fucked, because people's attention is a fixed quantity. You cannot engage with content than whatever 100 hours a week or whatever. And that really means it's the quality that will matter, and the social network, which is possible now.
Yeah, the social network is important.
It's the interest networks. Yeah.
I see Peter have your hand up, but just a quick question to Adam. How did you find out that Author had good versioning, and what apps don't? Did you just try Time Machine randomly? Because we don't really highlight it. I just wondered just quickly.
I saved and then I looked at the file menu, I think, and saw a go back, or I don't know what it's called, revision something, and was pleasantly surprised. That is how I found out. But having excellent export and import capability, Mark has mentioned that before, and I say, how do you pronounce your name? Yuri.
Jury. Juke talks jury.
Oh, Yuri.
Yuri,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Well, the Swedish pronunciation.
Jury.
And you touched upon that as well, having many tools, but being in the web and being a part of the web. So import export will be there, and not just as PDF, but I use Author as a clipboard. I write my Twitter, my small tweets in Author, and so I have them saved, and then I paste them in at last moment, because I think many people are not really like professionals. Not everyone is comfortable writing online and having the whole edit history online, because you want the private notes and private thinking, and you want to publish when it's ready enough. And I think that's also a group to write tools for.
I mean,
People who want to think locally.
We do have WordPress exports, but publish, but Apple broke it, and I can't afford to fix it right now. So yeah, Peter, and thank you for that,
Okay.
Adam. Thank you.
One thought is maybe we'd want to move to something like the VS Code model if we had a shell that our different writing projects could be plugged into, so that the user experience would be launching one app, and then within that app, they could cherry pick different artisanal writing tools to bring them into the environment. Another thought is I've never liked the micro payment model, because people are generally cheap. So what's going to psychologically happen, especially for the student who'd rather spend his money on beer than on an app, is that the student is going to say, well, I won't bother to go hunt down that link. I'm not going to pull in that transclusion because I know it's going to cost me. And even though it's costing me a micro amount, if I start doing this liberally across the board, it's going to add up pretty soon. Just like everyone who wants to have me subscribe to their streaming video service so that I can watch one particular show. It's so frustrating. There are like a half dozen shows, and there's only one show per streaming provider that I'm interested in. So I know that if I start picking up, even though the individual subscriptions are small, in aggregate, they're going to start mounting up. So what I've been thinking for a long time is to shift to a micro preference model, where you would buy into the ecosystem, and then you'd be free to use anything in the smorgasbord, but as you do, it would be tracking what you're using. And if you had little preference control widgets, so that instead of just closing something or opening something, you could be grudgingly opening it, or indicate that, yes, I'm using this, but the only reason I'm using this is because I have no alternative, as opposed to I'm using this because I really love it. And you'd be able to indicate which dimension of the tool you like. So you have to have a sophisticated rating system, and that should just simply exist as a little widget palette, so that you could have a preference palette that would be off to the screen somewhere. So you wouldn't have to go hunting menus or anything. It would literally just be a 2-click. Instead of clicking the close box, you click the close needs work box. And then you'd have the preference system, and you'd have to feed that through the network, because basically what we have is a flow network. Now, I might find that I absolutely love Frode's tool. It might be hyper popular. It might turn out that for Frode's tool to work, he needs some small indie developer who's building Obscure Toolkit A. And without Obscure Toolkit A, Frode's thing won't be maintainable in the long term. But the people who are using his program don't know of the existence of Obscure Toolkit A, because that's a subcomponent. If you go with the pricing model, the author of Obscure Toolkit A has to figure out that there's one user who's getting a tremendous amount of value from his toolkit and price it accordingly. And there's a lack of information. We need to really push the information so that it gets to the right place. So then what we could have is Frode indicate which of the tools that he is using to build his tool are the most helpful. So in Frode's little preference panel, he could indicate that Obscure Toolkit A is indispensable, and therefore a larger percent of the preference flow into his end user app node would get rerouted to Obscure Toolkit A's author, so that he would see a bigger chunk of the upside. And it'd be in everyone's interest to be honest about what their preferences are, because that would control how the distribution of the overall pot of money would get awarded out to the people who are developing the actual underlying value. That's sort of the model that I've been playing with, and I've got to figure out whether that's viable programming, because we basically have a network flow model, and you'd have to loop the thing through a few cycles and hope that it would stabilize. And you'd have to start thinking about, well, what happens if you get a couple of people who start forming a ring trying to say that their friend's item is absolutely indispensable for them, and their friend says that, and hopefully that would just sort of like close off into a little island that would be outside the main flow, so it wouldn't do them any good anyhow to be lying about the preferences.
Well, in the olden days, we had magazines. You know, I remember reading MacUser, and the ads were absolutely prime enjoyment territory. So, you know, there is the curation aspect. I mean, today we have really successful DJs on YouTube. You get these DJ sets that are an hour and a half of exactly the music that we like, and they get the credit, you know, and that's good. So yeah, I think it's an interesting direction you're looking at.
Yeah, also, we should factor out the store interface from the curation function. What should happen, I mean, if we had a functioning antitrust department in the US, it would come in and it would tell Apple, you can build a store user interface, but you can't also control the curation and take 30% of the sales. And your users should be able to choose which curation provider they want to have filtering all of those apps that are in the App Store. And you should be able to use their service for curation independent. What we have now is what you call a tying. And the whole point in antitrust law of trying to combat tyings is so that you don't wind up in a scenario where you buy a GM truck, and as a contractual condition of buying the GM truck, you're told you can only fill it up at GM gas stations. So you can't use any gas station. It can't be filled up in a Shell or an Exxon.
It's going to get us all riled up now because we so strongly agree with that point. But it's a little politics outside of
okay.
our reach. But yeah,
Fair enough.
Let me look at things from another perspective, because you were talking about, okay, so how do you sort of monetize this? I was thinking back to it. So as a writer, and so as an academic writer, do I get any upside for writing well-structured documents, leaving aside the academic content?
That's a good question right there.
Do I get any bunts for that? The answer is no, because I'm a bit part player. But I think back to the conversation at the Future of Text 2017. I think we were talking with the guy from Elsevier, and I go back to Chris Guttridge's almost open comment when he was sort of talking about the pump priming circle. Might it be the case that actually some of the publishers would say, you know, if they were sort of saying, you know, if they sort of gave a nudge. Now, it doesn't mean that everybody else won't jump in and do the same thing, which would be a shame for you, but on the upside to the community as a whole, it's where we want to go, and part of what you're doing is pushing us all in the right direction. But I'm just wondering if there's anything you can do it so that the people who do have money are the publishers, large publishers, and it should be self-evident to them in a way that, you know, if they get stuff in that's cleaner and better referenced and cited, it actually makes their job easier.
Yeah, I'm just going to pause recording for a second. Just recording again. Yeah, no, exactly. The Me Too effect is quite important.
Or we could have celebrity endorsements of apps. You know, I want to use the app that Maya Angelou wants to use for writing poetry.
I have app celebrity endorsements. When you go on the App Store and you look at it, you know, the inventor of Siri, Adam Chaya, is gushing over it. It's really touching and lovely. And you think that Apple people would know what Siri is, right? It has had no effect. You know, co-inventor of the internet, no effect. The inventor of hypertext even managed to say something, no effect. Bruce Horn, who was on the first Mac team, no effect. What do we need? Do we need
I have a couple of ideas.
Kardashian here or what?
William Gibson, maybe a famous rapper.
Yeah, I mean, all these people would be great, but they should go in the book, right? That's a bit
But
more.
it's like I said, you need to be on the Kardashians.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, we're doing a big update with author. We're also changing the background color. It's not going to be beige anymore. It's going to be gray. Looking at Adam's face, really clear. Okay. Raphael is thumbs up.
You know, there really should be a reality TV program about software developers and academics like us, so that people could follow the adventures of building a better information ecosystem.
You have seen Silicon Valley, right?
Is that on one of those paid streaming services?
It's in one of those locked. I can't remember where it is, but guys, have you not all seen Silicon Valley?
See,
No.
Wait. Has anyone? Wait. None of you? Really? Oh, you, Adam, you have.
yeah.
Yeah, I was there at the time, and it captures the texture, the smell, the scenery, the language, and the characters 100%. You have to see it. Seriously, just find it pirated if you have to, I guess, considering it's long out of print, so to speak. It is really, really Silicon Valley. It's so clever and funny and correct.
Actually, for an earlier time, also watch *Halt and Catch Fire*.
Oh yeah, but that's quite scary though.
Oh, that one I loved. I watched that one. Hot and Catch Fire was great.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Sort of the start of the PCs, yeah.
Sorry, guys, I have to leave early. I got another call lined up in 10 minutes. So.
Okay, well that's cool.
Yeah,
Thanks
see-
for
see
coming
you
by,
next
Gary.
time. And just one thing is, my schedule been pushed by a month because no, by a week because I've been doing on the other side. So sorry, Mark.
Oh no, that's fine.
Yeah,
You hit me up when you want my help.
Okay. No, I just wanted to say that. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Cool. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Gary.
Have a great weekend.
Right.
Yes. You too.
But
Yeah.
when I look at Author and we compare it to the other apps that exist, right? Author is your project, right? You don't have like a big team. You don't have people posting on social media. You don't have. I don't think it's the same ecosystem kind of software. I see it like looking and meeting all of you. I see Author as being something maybe connected to you partnering up with universities or schools and having an integrated like, okay, so for this class, we're gonna use Author, and then here's all the tutorials you need, here's how to use it, here's the code for you to download it. But like the institution pays for it because it's an institutional tool. I don't see cool kids using it because it doesn't fit like the day-to-day things that they're doing with text, right? It's a very specific tool.
It's very nice for you to come with that perspective, but it is designed exactly for people who are writing a paper. And one of the things that was shocking to me is all the crap with references. So just doing the automatic reference section, I really thought would be a magical thing that people would want. You know, you do a citation, you don't have to faff about with the formatting and all of that. So I thought the opposite of what you're saying. So for you to say that is really enlightening.
Okay, so if I was writing a book, Author would be amazing. If I was writing a paper, Author would be amazing. If I'm writing a Medium post, you know, and that's what we have. We have more Medium posts than we have articles and we have book writers. So it's just presenting it in the context of the person that is writing it. If you want to sell it to Medium people that write Medium posts, you have to make a video specific showing the possibilities of Author in the context of Medium posts. And if you have a video for the academics, then it would be specific for that audience. And like, to be honest, I don't know how Rome managed to go because I find it extremely ugly. I find it very hard to use. It's a huge wall of text. It's not pleasurable to use Rome. Right?
It's for a special kind of nerd. But before, Mark, before you comment, just a question to all of you. It used to say in the App Store that Author is minimalist academic writing. Now I have changed it to, and I want to know if you agree, writing plus concept map.
Yes.
Because students will hopefully still get that, but it may broaden it a little bit. Because it is the only app that has a built-in concept map, as far as I know.
Yeah, I mean, this sort of chimes in with the point I was going to make, picking up on what Raphael said about, and you said about doing citations. I think part of the problem is that you're right, it's mostly really badly done, but you don't really get any upside for doing it well, apart from the time that you may save. So I don't think teacher says, wow, you know, extra points, you got a cracking set of references, you know, all clear, no mistakes. It's more that this is rubbish, do over. So one of the inadvertent problems here is you've made something that's sort of hard and a chore to do much easier. But you don't. But actually, the user, funnily enough, through no fault of what you've done, gets any upside out of it. So to a certain extent, the only people who can shift the needle there are the teachers.
Also, you only realize that problem with references not by writing 10 or 20 papers in your undergraduate studies. It really becomes a problem later on when you're juggling hundreds or 200s of references, and they all need to be right, and it's hard to. So it's
imagine
a hard push.
Journalists using it. And journalists need references. They need, you know, to find sources, and a combination of author and what's the other one for you to find things fast?
Liquid.
Oh, Liquid.
Yeah, Liquid plus author would be great for journalists. And I don't know if that's a specific audience, but I mean, all of these publics, all of these people that I'm mentioning, it's a very small audience. Like how many journalists can you sell to? If you take all the journalists in the world, how big is that audience? How many use Max? And then how many know about it? So you start filtering out, and there's not a lot of people.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of audience. It's a specific audience.
But as a question to all of you then, what do undergraduate students, you think, value? The ones who are interested enough to look outside Google Docs.
Yeah.
I'm not going to rename author Bear.
Actually, that's not such a bad idea.
You know, in Russia, there is a brand called Generic, because there's so much advertising better than generic brand. So a company actually made a brand called Generic. I'm not joking. Bear writing, yeah, I see that. Well, there is a note-taking app called Bear.
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
Peter.
See, I always thought there'd be a market for extra slutty olive oil, but I haven't seen anyone do it yet. So anyhow,
I'm sure you can find that in New York City.
Could be. So I think the people who care about having nice, painless citation export are also going to be people who are constrained to use a highly specific reference formatting system. So they're going to wind up gravitating to Zatora or Bookends or one of the apps that has a huge library of the canonical formats required by each obscure journal. So what you're doing is a nice, beautiful citation. It's absolutely usable to humans, but the subset of humans who care about citations are really hyper obsessive about the exact formatting, to the point of, you know, the second author has to be abbreviated on his first name. First author in the list has to have the first name in
No,
full.
you're talking about Mark Anderson, I know.
Yeah. So as a result, pushing the painless citations isn't going to be enough to sell it with that audience unless you are able to maybe use AppleScript and delegate out getting the correct citation formatting to another app that specializes in just doing that.
Yeah.
And then if you said that, you know, and with AppleScript, we interoperate with your reference manager of choice to get the formatting in the format you need, and just have within author a drop-down menu of citation formats that are supported by whatever program's actually going to do the work for you.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying. That's a strong point. Yeah, Mark, what do you want?
It was interesting, Raphael's point about the journalists, and before he made the point that there may not be very many of them, but nonetheless, one thought in terms of affordances and thinking what you've done with Visual Meta is, ostensibly, it could, for instance, make it easier for journalists to pass in additional systems, additional information required via their new systems, because it's just data.
Yeah, I'm not going to target journalists.
No. I'm not suggesting, but I think it's worth thinking about, because it may be a way to help put your story across. Because often the thing is telling the story in the context that somebody understands, even if you're then, in a sense, selling something else. So, in other words, this problem that you have, it fixes that in this setting.
No, it doesn't, because journalists, I agree with you, but journalists, in my experience with Liquid and so on, they are really offended that someone shouldn't just print out an A4 sheet of their article and read it. The fact that you can even use something like Liquid to look up things is horrendous to them, because everything should be with good journalistic standards defined in that page. I have a half-page article in the New York Times, crying, saying how horrible the software is because you could spend your entire day looking up the word "the." Journalists are the opposite of the market.
No, I was thinking something like The Economist or the FT or something.
Yeah, but the Economist, even though Tom is absolutely wonderful and clever, they are very, they did do a half page as well, The Economist, on Liquid a few years ago. But it has a very limited reach, of course, in this context. But a question for you guys, with the new concept map, as in dynamic view being called that, the whole point being concept map as you learn and get a glossary on export. In terms of the learning tool, how do you feel about that? Does that make a marketable point? Because, you don't want to do your concept map and then lose all the data and then you start writing. Here it is connected. But unfortunately, when this was presented to my advisor on Monday, he said teachers don't care about glossaries or key terms. It's just not interesting to them, which was a big disappointment, even if it's generated.
Teachers?
Yeah.
Academia is very Luddite. It has to be.
That's interesting. I don't know. I don't like these kind of statements because if I was a teacher, I would very much care about this. So getting the terms right, that's crucially important. So I very much disagree with that.
I guess it's depending on the university or school.
Yeah, maybe, but no, because, this is kind of a point that is very important to me, and we've seen terms having been changed their meanings or significantly diluted, and now so if I read the paper, for instance, and the news or even scientific papers, it doesn't really matter. What I really hate is that terms being used in the wrong context or even used inflationary. So getting the words right, I think, is fundamentally important. So to me, it would be very valuable, and it's not just a minor thing. And even if you're writing a paper, or even if you come up with new terms or new definitions and descriptions of terms, I think it's crucially important that you have some kind of tool that keeps track of that, also for the interest of clear and concise communication. So I think it's so don't get this weight here. I think it's fundamentally important.
And doesn't if you have a course or you have an undergraduate program that, it's just a whole lot of modules that are all box and cocks and different things, maybe not. But if they're all related, arguably one of the other things is over the course of your study, the glossary, this metadata that you're acquiring, actually should help you towards a synthesis. So as you go through the course, you may be on the next module that ostensibly is about something else, but you will already have acquired a body of references or terms that you've worked out and understood that you can reapply. Now, that doesn't seem like much because people don't do it, or they do, but it's on a scrappy bit of paper probably that they wrote. So surfacing that aspect of it, the ability that having, this is the thing that sort of comes out when you're talking about author, is that, well, okay, you can take that and you can, or you can sort of synthesize the documents together and get a meta glossary out of it, things like that. I think that is actually quite powerful. It's the thing we don't do at the moment. We don't do it because we can't do it, but now we can do it. We should start to think about using it. So doing what we wanted to do but couldn't do before. We should stop now complaining that we're not going to do it because we used not to be able to do it. I mean, it's difficult to push people over the hump, but there is, I think that's another useful aspect you can put into the sort of the academic framing of it.
I just uploaded a screenshot suggestion of how to phrase this. Sorry, people are texting without. They put it on quiet mode.
Sad thing is, given the general tenor of the Mac App Store, marketing-wise, you might be better off by promoting it as the most beautiful writing experience on Macintosh.
Yeah.
Make friends and influence people by using this app. 10 things you didn't know about writing. Yes.
Some people like it.
Was that the tagline? Some people like it.
Yeah.
Well, I love BB Edits.
People who
BB
liked
Edit
whatever it
doesn't
is also liked author. Yeah.
I love BB Edits. BB Edit doesn't suck. Marketing campaign. That was sheer genius.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Not so good for Hoover though.
Nothing sucks like Electrolux. That was what they planned to do in Singapore, at least.
Yeah.
So yeah, anyway, thank you guys. It's been a lot about author this session, and I greatly appreciate your perspectives. I think we will have to combine a few things here. We can't have a pithy single sentence. They get a glossary on export, maybe a bit, not initial sentence. Maybe we move that back a bit, but yeah.
Yes, it's a bit like, you get your hand stamped on the way out for readmission.
It's also a little troubling how writing communities are starting to balkanize to a certain extent. You have the people who only publish on Medium. You have the WordPress only crowd. We really need like a link server to be able to go in and augment those sites with links to the other sites outside of the purview of the original authors.
RSS rather withered on the vine, didn't it? But I suppose the problem is everyone wants to monetize. So isn't that the whole thing of Medium? I have so many cookies turned off that I never seem to hit that. But occasionally when I go from other things, I immediately hit sort of paywall. So I suspect that's probably what's driving the balkanization to a degree.
Yeah, I mean, I understand magazines. As we said earlier, magazines are great, but things like Medium just feels very, I mean, I paid for a while, but it just feels balkanized. Yeah, that's the word.
I mean, it's blogs in one wrapper, as far as I could see. But I wasn't joking. I mean, it's a shame RSS went away. I mean, I still use NetNewsWire as my way of reading lots of stuff. And I enjoy their, but like, it's like there are very few places. The Atlantic is one of the few places that still offers a full fat article on RSS.
Oh, really? They do? That's very good.
Yeah. But it took me a year to get them to recognize the authors, because whoever built the template, it used to tell you who took the photos, but it never recognized the authors, which I thought was a bit off.
The strange thing is that podcasts came back. Not from the dead, but it went down, and suddenly, and they are delivered by RSS as many times. So things can resurrect or be revived in some way. I wonder if some kind of hype blogging, but yeah, Docuverse blogging can be resurrected in the same way. Being connected by RSS and not particular servers.
Well, Brent Simmons has taken control of NetNewsWire, so it's not going off to pasture just yet, which is a great thing. Except it doesn't run. His current one doesn't run on my OS yet.
There was a legal app many years ago, like late 80s, early 90s. And it was basically a office bookkeeping, document management, office in a box kind of an application. But its main claim to fame was that it was highly themed to the degree that you could choose to have a background and setting of a high-tech office in San Francisco looking out on the city. There was like a backdrop from a Boston legal kind of a feel to it. There was the old quintessential English office, and the people would almost get it just for the desktops and the skinning of the underlying program, because it just looked so cool to imagine that you were in that setting when you were doing your work.
Yeah, that's cool. Sorry, question about RSS. You were talking about full fat article, Mark, on RSS.
What I meant was you can, if you go through an RSS reader, so if you go to the BBC, you get a headline and half the first sentence. So it's just to come on.
Yeah.
So some people still write blogs through it, but I mean, I don't look at lots of magazines through it, but it has been interesting that the Atlantic, which is fairly premier sort of magazine, you can read the whole article with the pictures. You can't see comments and things, but
So
in fact, you can read the whole long form article through a newsreader.
No, so the question then becomes RSS or Atom or whatever.
They're the same. RSS and Atom are the same.
Yeah, basically. Well, yes. They can have a whole thing in them, right?
Yeah.
So do you need a server in the traditional sense behind it, or can it be peer-to-peer? Once you have the Atom, sorry, the RSS feed, you could have the whole packet, right?
Well, as long as, I mean.
No, hang on. So I'm saying if I run an RSS server on my laptop,
Yeah.
as long as the lid is open and it's on,
Yeah.
if I publish a new PDF to that with the correct meta information, it'll go to whoever subscribed to it. Let's say you and Raphael. You will get the whole thing. I close the lid. You still have it.
Yeah, I believe so.
I don't know if you can include a full PDF as a binary file, but in you could get that PDF right after you download your RSS.
Even if you get a link,
yeah.
I mean, or you get a link to it. The point is you can go and find it. I mean, I know to a certain extent, whether was it Feedly and things like that, one of the things that, so there was a degree of gentle aggregation of RSS, which was more about the timeliness of finding stuff and a degree of sort of caching across the whole of the internet. But in principle, the idea is RSS is very modular. And I know someone's done, I sort of made a specimen one for the documentation I write. You could do a similar sort of thing using JSON. It's not, I don't think it ever got anywhere, but if you don't want to be working in very verbose XML, you can probably do something. Other formats are available, but this sort of micro publishing thing, I think, is actually quite interesting. It's been overlooked. I can see why it got stamped on, because people didn't really work out how you monetized RSS.
So that means that if we wanted to, we could use, for instance, Author, and we could have an export option there that is export to whatever we call this. People who subscribe to that, and you probably find out from a website or whatever, URL, doesn't matter. Your copy of Author or Reader or whatever would get that stuff. And then you could add and delete subscriptions like you can with any RSS feed. New people come to the network and they can do the same. So basically, it becomes RSS peer-to-peer, document-based. So you have a folder on your computer with the PDFs of those articles that you can do what you want with. And then we also have the other stuff we talked about where you can link from one to another. And because you have this RSS reader, it'll know where it is on your hard drive and open it for you instantly. So that could be, the RSS really could be the Docuverse solution then, couldn't it?
Well, I don't know if you have links to either. Was it Dave Weiner who sort of, I think, originally made it, may have, I mean, I know originally it was designed for sort of text/simple HTML, but you could mix other stuff in with it. So that was its conceptual start, in the way that OPML was really designed for sharing extremely simple notes, and has sort of blossomed out from that rather. But I don't see why it couldn't be done like that. You know, but in other words, instead of you having to necessarily publish to an HTML form, because there is an issue. I mean, one of the things is even if your Mac is a sort of effectively the notional server, part of the thing in the RSS is a permalink. So you know, you've got to have a dereferenceable URI somewhere in the system, even if it's not live at the time. But that's the general underpinnings of it.
Well, that could maybe be the Internet Archive. Can anybody submit to that or not?
You can. Well, I did something the other day. Well, but only transpired wrongly. So I was looking at an old site from, you know, about, I don't know, about 1994 on it, and I was trying to open another page. So, oh, this page exists. Do you want to add it? So I clicked yes, only to find that in fact that someone was sort of basically had rebought this domain and was using it for something else. So, but yes, you can say to the archive. I don't know if you can point it at a complete. I don't know the way of saying please archive this site. You can certainly extend, because I've done it, you can extend content that's in there to pages they're missing from a known site. What the criteria are for getting in through the front door at the first point, I don't know. I assume it's not everything because sadly, like so many things, you know, why we can't have nice toys is people would spam it full of all sorts of stuff.
Interesting.
But it's still doable. I don't think we need an Internet Archive. We need some repositories where you go to download and find things, either by JSON or RSS. It's not important which format. It could, if as it's a new system, it could just have a very, very simple JSON feed, just asking for new things. Frode has written since last Monday. That's and the repository, I don't think we should think peer-to-peer, but rather federated systems like email. You have many high-quality repositories that are experts in storing things. Internet Archive can be one of them, but it could also be Frode's personal server and my personal server. And as long as we don't depend on any particular server, but rather finding things by cryptographic hashes are good for finding an exact version of a document, but we shouldn't build it on a particular like IPFS. Now Jury is not here, so I can mispronounce his name and also talk trash about the overly specific dependencies on technologies, because it's even if that system is good, IPFS system, chances are that it will not be here in 10 years. So I think having simple dependencies on cryptographic hashes is a better way to go here, to just verify that this file is uncorrupted.
You certainly, and one thing I would note if going down that route is that, you could certainly, you know, in a sense, advertise in one place and have the repository elsewhere. The thing you just want to watch out for is that you set it up such that you're not pushing people across domains, because all sorts of security things have now take that as an immediate red flag. It's a sort of techie thing, but it's just to bear in mind so in other words, you would need to make it that the server, which might be completely elsewhere, appears to be sort of you. And then it all appears kosher.
But that is only a problem in the browser. If Author or a small program locally fetches the thing, it can fetch things from wherever it likes. So it's, if you have a local browser, that's true, but not in Author. Author can fetch from several different domains in whatever it is. And that's what I'm advocating, a small local server that fetches things for you, and it could be Author or a component that serves Author. And in a way, I'm building something like that, a very simple system for that. So we should be able to set something up, and I'm very interested in doing this because I'm doing this anyway. I'm building a spatial hypertext system visualizing your local resources, but I also want to, because I have thousands of files and images and videos, and it's hard to going through the regular file browser is it's not a good way of organizing your information or visualizing it. So I'm building a system for pulling quotes and pages out of PDFs and so on.
So I'm glad we went over time today, so we'd finally learned your big dirty secret, Adam.
That sounds really
Yeah,
interesting.
I've shown Frodo a screenshot. That's all I've shown. But I'm
Yeah,
really
exactly. Just nothing so far.
Oh, yeah.
compared to
Always
what-
excited by hearing about spatial architects.
Well, I mean, look, this is super interesting. So the absurd thing for me, looking at the screen here, a couple of us have books in the background, right? It used to be that, oh my gosh, the internet is so brilliant. We don't need to go to a bookshop, blah, 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 right? And now it's become the opposite. Now it is, I have the book, I know where it is, it cites this other book. That's the old fashioned way is so much more robust.
Mm.
But if we work on what we're talking about here, we have Adam's system as the library, and we can use reader to read, author to author. We could actually have a proper normalized peer-to-peer system where someone says something and it goes to the people who are interested, just like a normal journal in the old days would be mailed. Yeah, Peter?
It's muted.
Peter raised
Hand
his
up.
hand but forgot to unmute.
Oh, thank you. Sorry about that. I'm talking away there to a muted room. A while back in the chat at 11:17, I posted a link to an article by a Foresight researcher talking about the procedures he uses for dealing with results of horizon scanning. Basically, he has the incoming flow of information. Initially, he was throwing it into a citation manager. Then his most recent thing is he's found a open source Zettelkasting program. So he's doing Zettels for every source coming in. I use DevonThink 3, but one of the frustrations of DevonThink 3 is that it treats tags as being a set. I think what we need to really make sense and organize things is an ordered set of tags with combinators to indicate how the subcomponents relate to each other. So it'd be a reference combinator, another referent, another combinator, another reference, so that you could actually structure a relationship that's a couple levels deep. And then you could use a description logic reasoner or something to be able to do your retrieval off of that database. But there's nothing that's really good for just efficiently building those tags. I can start typing in a tag in DevonThink, and then it will offer a bunch of autocompletes, but it's just one giant universal soup of every tag that has ever been entered for any document that ever existed, instead of having any kind of a contextual sense where I could narrow it down. So I think if you had like a category, then from the category, your tagger program would show you relevant entries in the category. And also you could indicate before you even started what the general context you were operating in, so that you could filter down on that context and have just the subset of relevant tags. So you could just click, 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 click really, really fast. And the tagger app, if it existed, could then use AppleScript to tell DevonThink, okay, now DevonThink, go and load this resource, save a web archive of it, give it this tag, but separate out the user interface of the tag classification. So I want to be able to describe, documents about people in the 1980s who were doing hypertext, and actually build statements. So you'd have sort of a domain-specific language for building up your classification system, which is so weak on helping us to classify for retrieval. And tags were wonderful because they let us have a few orthogonal dimensions and work on them over time, which is great. But when you start getting a gig or so of saved stuff off the internet, because you have to save a local copy, because you can't be sure the website won't go away, or that something might happen, or maybe it never made it into the Wayback Machine. A few times I've been hoping the Wayback Machine would save my bacon just to get, sorry, we've never seen this URL ever before. And you wind up saving it. So you have an external solid state drive with 4 or 5 gig worth of material from the internet, and a tag soup isn't quite enough. We need more to be able to get at it in a rational manner, and it takes too much time to go dragging things manually between a folder organization, and it might not necessarily even be the correct organization for the classification. So I think
what I'm doing with this, I agree with you that tagging and there should be a tagging on steroids with like saved searches are very specific, and but I think spatial hypertext or spatial visualization of things is a very good way to go. I've tried it locally now because I have so much digital material, and now I take this this recording and put it into my system and just put different links to different times for a local copy of this recording. And I really want to do that with more information, and putting different things together is also very important. This conversation together with a PDF from that old PDF and my own notes together, and that's one way to do it. Not just tag, but also put it in a working space, but a specific reading, so to say.
Because listening to Peter talk, I realized that in Tinderbox, which is my primary work tool, I mean, the one thing I've learned to do is yeah, I just don't use, well, if I may keep tags because it's part of the provenance, but I don't ever use tags because it's a bucket. It doesn't tell me anything. I make things addressable by adding metadata. So in Tinderbox terms, I add a field, which then allows me another axis of richness on that. And sometimes I may effectively add several, which in a way is by another means building out the sort of tag richness that you're talking about. And in fact, that's going to improve in the new version that I'm just testing at the moment. It's going to have dictionary objects and things. But quickly for Adam, you've seen Klaus Achtenbeck's recent papers. The one person I know is doing stuff with spatial hypertext still at HOF in Germany. I'll put it's.
Yeah, put that in, that's useful.
Yeah, I'll just type it in the sidebar for you.
So I have a question then immediately for you guys. And it's nice today that we're going over time. This is quite productive. For the next Future of Text book, can we do it this way? Meaning, can we treat every single article as a post in this sense, like its own freestanding? I'm going to keep using the word PDF for simplicity. All of them is a PDF. Maybe I run a server, quote unquote, called Future Text Publishing. And I'm only publishing that book, article by article. So that can then be organized in Adam's world. And when you open it, there are different, like we have chapters and such in a book. That can be flexible, so you can choose to open it as a full PDF with all of it, or just this, or just that. I mean, can we use this book to make this thing real?
Need a visual meta convention for describing the other applications and state within those applications.
Yes, so exactly. So, okay. Because what would be amazing is if we use, first of all, we can tear the first book apart and redo it in this way. It'll take a lot of work because of InDesign nonsense, but fair enough. But if we can, just for fun, let's say we want to compete with Medium, just as an intellectual approach, right? It'd make it much, much, much more flexible. We probably could do that. And if we do that, then we get the Me Too thing that was talked about earlier. Other writers could see this is a good way to produce content that is findable, readable, in a completely distributed environment that also serves legacy software.
So what are you asking here? If it's doable, or if it's because do you want the web page people can go to and see different views of the first volume and second volume? Is that what you're asking for, or I'm not really sure what you're.
I'm not really sure either, but I don't think that's it. What I think is the basic thing would be each
Future of Text / API.
Well, so this is through RSS, right? So I have a thing called Future Text Publishing that you can subscribe to. I also will have a personal one thing you can subscribe to. So in Author, I write a thing and I click publish to the world. That goes into the RSS feed and people who subscribe to it get it. So that's all quite simple. We talked about earlier. So then what becomes interesting is currently these feeds and things are just individual things. I'm talking about, I want it to still be a book somehow. So the visual meta then would have to specify, and the external meta specify, this is part of so-and-so book, volume so-and-so, page so-and-so to so-and-so, so that the reader, if they choose to, can go through their stuff, their PDFs on their hard drive individually and put it out in Adam's workspace if they want to, or open it as a coherent book or whatever. So there has to be a way to say this thing is actually part of this thing.
Well, pages are problematic because we might want to have a large format version of it and iPod Touch format version of it. So some you might imagine the pages being very small, and otherwise you might imagine the pages being a huge broadsheet where you could have 2 or 3 entries visible simultaneously.
I'm not too worried about that because one of the key concepts of visual meta is if you give a value, you really should say what it means. So if you say page 3, then it has to also say page 3 when it's produced in a volume that is this kind of thing.
Ah,
right. But it's still going to be, the canonical form will still be this human size. You know, for novelty, we can do bigger. But I really don't care about this in this context.
The other thing that we haven't quite worked out that's come home from when I find tinkering around with OCR abstracted text is that you want a document where you can reference what was or is in paper conception page 3, but you don't want a thing saying page 3 in the middle of a sentence when you run out the text, because the PDF's too dumb to know otherwise, and plain text doesn't have those extra affordances. I mean, I don't know what the answer is, but it's something we need to do, and it's something we haven't yet quite evolved. I mean, even digital native documents that end up as PDFs don't necessarily give you a clean plain text. The most obvious case being through the use of ligatures, which don't reverse back into monospace font elegantly.
That is a real issue. We've had that issue.
Adam, I put some stuff in the sidebar.
Thank you. I will read it gladly.
Very good.
That's one thing, Mark. You have so many books that you show. You will do, but about how hypertext. Could you post something on? I've got a copy of like literary machines and some classics, but yeah, I got one too. They sold it for $50 at my local film library. I thought it was a book that was not needed anymore, and so they sold it for $50.
I won't tell you how much I paid for. Well, but this is actually the crying shame. So I mean, it's an interesting thing about hypertext in particular that no one's heard of Doug. You can't buy Ted's books for love nor money. They're not available in digital form. It's they thought it was not needed to have it. It's one of 4 copies in Swedish libraries, and you are a very lucky man, sir. yeah, I was very lucky because I borrowed it for a full year before, but then I hit my limit, and then they sold it immediately. But they sold it to me, really. But there are so many systems that I don't know about it, and I don't know which books to read, where the gold is really, because on spatial hypertext it mostly happened in the ACM's hypertext conference, and I give you more. Marshall and Shipman are the people who started with Vicky and VKB, and which sadly are about to die because they were all written in Java Mark 1 and no one wants to play with it because it's gnarly. And so I imagine within a year or so they'll be dead and no one will have them, which is a real shame actually. But the guys at Hoff are doing something. The main problem is they can't get anyone to pay. I mean, it's a classic research thing. They can't get anyone to pay for the work. But there's some quite interesting ideas that they have. And I'm sure anyway, I mean, Klaus is interested and engaged, so I'm sure if you write to him anyway, he sort of leads up there. Did a very good conference for us in 2019, actually.
Yeah.
Thank you. Frode, yeah, I know we're going over time, but I think it's enough to just publish a big regular PDF book and a regular book and do something like I do, like pull the pages out of the PDF digitally, put them on a canvas and pull quotes out of the pages and put them on the canvas with commentary on the side. You get very far with that, and you can have the whole file intact. You don't have to divide a PDF into separate parts. My system is in the browser. It can pull up pages out of PDFs without a problem, having it in different sizes. And
Well, I think that would be very useful, and I think we should do that. I think that'd be wonderful. I also think it should be possible for someone to enter this community without talking to any one of us, but using similar software, citing something here,
yeah,
and boom, it's integrated.
And I certainly, something else we probably should be doing, and we can do that maybe in the Circle community, whatever, is documenting just the sort of thing that Adam's mentioned. So how are now we have the first one, how are people using it beyond the traditional thing of just writing in the margins, which is fine, but a thing, bearing in mind we're talking about the future of text, is saying, okay, but maybe we will still be using books because we can't find a better way. But in other words, how do we move beyond that into a digital sphere and have the same affordances we felt we had before and the same immediacy? Because I'm sure that lots of different people were doing lots of things, and lots of people will think not to mention it because nobody asked them.
on that note, I'm a bit hesitant investing in Circle. I feel like it's a paid for, Frode pays for it, I guess, big money every month. And
it's very
will it be here in 5 years? Will Circle be there? Will Frode be able to pay for it? And will it have the features we want? Is that the kind of, so should we save our link collections there? Should we write our articles? Should we have our discussions?
I just meant
discussions there. No, but it's good. I just wonder how we make this permanent, so it doesn't like link rot or die in a few years, so we could document this in a good way.
I think Circle is absolutely fine, but it's certainly not brilliant. I really, really, really desperately want us to start writing PDFs, just because they're for the long haul. With the intelligence we can put on top of them, they're absolutely fine. We don't need another document format, right? So let's just do that, but we have to do it in what we're talking about now, in a way that they can refer to each other. It can be so incredibly wonderfully powerful. You know, that for instance, we write our notes from this conversation today in a PDF, and then we put it
email each other.
Well, we put it on an RSS feed. We build into to reader and author, at least, an RSS server and reader. Adam, I forget, I'm embarrassed. What is the name of your system?
Well, it doesn't have a name. It's a local thing, so it is not named yet.
Local thing, that's a good name, actually.
Local thing.
The local thing could have an RSS.
Beer. It was beer.
That's
generic beer.
Really quite funny. All right, so generic beer can have it too. So, you know, to have this discussion, you know, Mark can write a response to what you just said. You can put it in your environment or not. Someone can read it with Reader, or someone could. There's nothing wrong with emailing it or putting it on the server. RSS is just another mailman or mailwoman or mailbot or whatever. So because the documents have to address other documents, I think it's so important. It cannot be based on DNS. DNS is such a temporary hack.
So we should put PDFs on Circle.
Yeah, I would be very happy with that. But just, I think that'd be really, really
like
cool.
you did.
Yeah, I've done a little bit, but obviously we don't have a strong community there now, and that's fine. I'm mostly using it as a place to list who's going to be in the book number 2 and to link to the things we have here. That's it, right? Simple stuff, but in the beginning, yeah, it's okay. But Okay, so who's going to write an RSS system for us?
Oh, I wouldn't know how, but I was just
I
thinking.
guess it's me then.
Okay.
I know how. And
I was thinking when you say one other thing about generating PDFs. I know early on I chose completely the wrong thing. I thought, right, when I finish, I'll redo my thesis, in Author. It's too big a thing at this stage, but it did occur to me that one thing I could sort of do, and others in the community could do, is take things like recent papers they've done. Well, you've done all the heavy work. You don't even have to think about the text, but it's kind of thing of take the text, put it into Author, sort of fix the references. In essence, produce a finished document where so you can do it quite easily. You haven't got to be writing a narrative. You haven't got to think about that. It's more about saying, but what does this, which I know, whose a sort of affordances and whose structure I know, what does it look like in the context of an Author document with the visual meta? And that might be a quite quick way to start to produce a number of things that are, in a sense, specimen documents that we can begin to burrow down into the real world life of visual meta.
I'd like to talk to you about that, especially to decide which documents you think merit that level of effort. But I think that's not a bad idea. Yeah, absolutely. So we have to close up at some point. But in terms of this RSS thing, where should we start, really? Because it sounds trivial, but of course it isn't. There's so many things in the details.
And you should give a good opportunity to give Chris Guttridge a nudge.
Yeah,
I suspect he's tinkering around with that.
but we could even start without RSS and just have one place, maybe an RSS in Circle, a place we put our articles that will respond. A Docuverse, a small Docuverse, and then we will do the RSS and create a repository as step 2 to automate things.
We can have a little virtual mail tree, and you take the icon of your file and you stick it on a branch.
All right, shall we think about that till Monday, maybe? I've got a really bad cold this week, so my head's not really working as it should. Hence why I haven't replied to your text, Mark, amongst other things. Okay, this is very, very exciting. So we're developing, on top of the internet, a new web. Yay. We have
more standards.
What is a web that is not a web? There's got to be another insect. Do you remember all the early names like gopher? That was another animal competing with the spider. Let's just call it lion space.
Well, I was going to say, following the vibe, it's just
Go
as
back
well.
to the cat naming convention that Apple used.
Yeah.
Well, at least they won't call Tiddles and Mr. Puffy and whatever.
Yeah. Yes. Anyway. All right, guys. Yeah, talk to you on Monday. Thank you very much for today. Raphael, we need to go through some emails, so that would be useful. We can do that on the same channel. Anyone else have anything else before we?
No, just to remind Adam to hit me up for more sources on the Spatial Hypertext. Very happy to help.
Right. Okay, guys. Look forward to Monday. Thanks for today.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.